She whispered she needed my warmth every night, until I realized I was the one trapped in her grip. I never thought I'd be sharing my apartment again. After 3 years of living alone, I'd gotten used to the silence, the routine, the freedom of having my own space. My 2-bedroom apartment wasn't huge, but it was mine. The second bedroom had become my office, filled with computer monitors and a desk where I spent most of my evenings working on coding projects. Then my phone rang at 11:30 on a Tuesday night. It was my younger sister, and I could hear the tears in her voice before she even said hello. Her 5-year relationship had just crashed and burned. Her boyfriend, well, ex-boyfriend now, had told her to pack her things and leave. Just like that. 5 years together, and she had 2 hours to grab whatever she could fit in her car. "I don't have anywhere to go," she said, her voice breaking. "Can I stay with you? Just for a little while?" What was I supposed to say? She's family. You don't turn away family when they're in trouble. Even though I loved my quiet life, even though I knew having a roommate would change everything, I told her yes. Of course, yes. She showed up around 1 in the morning with 2 suitcases and a cardboard box. Her eyes were red and swollen from crying, and she looked smaller than I remembered. More fragile. She'd always been the outgoing one, the one with a million friends and big plans. Seeing her like this, broken and lost, made my chest tight. "It's just temporary," I told her as I helped carry her things inside. "You can stay in the guest room until you figure things out." She nodded, not really looking at me. "Thank you. I promise I won't be in your way." I cleared out my office setup that night, moving everything into my bedroom. It took hours, but I wanted her to have a proper space, not just feel like she was crashing on someone's couch. When I finally finished, she was already asleep on the bed, still in her clothes, her shoes kicked off on the floor. The first week was quiet. Too quiet, actually. She barely came out of her room except to use the bathroom or grab something from the kitchen. I'd hear her moving around late at night, the floor creaking as she paced. Sometimes I'd wake up to the sound of muffled crying through the walls. I tried to give her space. Everyone deals with heartbreak differently, right? I figured she just needed time to process everything. During the day, I'd go to work at the tech company downtown, and when I came home, I'd find her exactly where I'd left her, sitting on the bed, staring at her phone or just staring at nothing. "You should eat something," I'd say, bringing her a plate of whatever I'd made for dinner. "I'm not hungry," she'd reply, but she'd pick at the food anyway, just to make me feel better. By the end of the first week, I was getting worried. This wasn't just sadness. This was something deeper. She wasn't showering regularly. She wasn't changing her clothes. The spark that had always defined her was completely gone, replaced by this hollow version of my sister. On the 8th night, everything changed. I woke up to a presence in my room. You know that feeling when you're asleep, and something just feels off? Your body knows someone's there before your brain fully wakes up. I opened my eyes to see her standing in my doorway, barely visible in the darkness. Her silhouette was perfectly still, and for a second, my heart jumped into my throat. "Hey," I said, sitting up and turning on the lamp beside my bed. "You okay?" She was trembling, her arms wrapped around herself. She was wearing an old t-shirt and sweatpants, and her hair was messy from tossing and turning. "I can't sleep," she whispered. "Every time I close my eyes, I just think about everything. About him, about how stupid I was, about how I wasted 5 years of my life." "You weren't stupid," I said automatically. "Can I?" She hesitated, looking at the floor. "Can I sleep in here? On the floor or something? I just can't be alone right now. The thoughts are too loud." I should have said no. I should have told her that she needed to push through it, that being alone with your thoughts is part of healing. But looking at her standing there, shaking and small and scared, I couldn't do it. "Yeah," I said. "Let me grab the air mattress from the closet." Her face flooded with relief. "Thank you. I'm sorry. I know this is weird." "It's fine," I said, even though something in my gut told me it wasn't fine, just for tonight. I set up the air mattress on the other side of my room, gave her a blanket and a pillow, and we both tried to settle back into sleep. I could hear her breathing in the darkness, quick and shallow at first, then gradually slowing down. Within 20 minutes, she was asleep. But it wasn't just for one night. The next evening, when bedtime came around, she appeared in my doorway again. "Is it okay if—" she started. "Yeah," I said, because what else could I say? "Air mattress is still there." This became the routine. Every night she'd sleep on the air mattress in my room. During the day she'd retreat back to the guest room, but when darkness fell, she couldn't handle being alone. I told myself it was temporary. She was going through trauma. This was what family did for each other. After about a week of this arrangement, things shifted again. It was a particularly cold night in October. The temperature had dropped suddenly, and my apartment's heating system always took a few days to catch up with the weather. I was wrapped in my blanket, half asleep, when I heard her voice. "Are you awake?" "Yeah," I mumbled. "I'm freezing," she said. "This air mattress is so cold. Can I just sleep up there? On top of the covers or something?" Every alarm bell in my head was ringing. This was crossing a line, but it was cold and she was my sister and I was tired of overthinking everything. "Fine," I said, "but stay on your side." She climbed into the bed and I put a pillow between us like a barrier. A ridiculous barrier. But it made me feel like I was maintaining some kind of boundary. She curled up on her side, pulling the blanket up to her chin. "Thank you," she whispered. "I just need the warmth. I feel so cold all the time now." I didn't respond. I just closed my eyes and tried to fall back asleep. Tried to ignore the weird feeling in my chest that told me this situation was spiraling into something I wouldn't be able to control. That night, I barely slept. I stayed perfectly still on my side of the bed, hyper-aware of every movement she made. And she moved a lot. In her sleep, she'd shift closer, inch by inch, until the pillow barrier between us became meaningless. When morning came, I woke up to find her pressed against my back, her arm draped over my side, her breath warm against my neck. That's when I knew I had a real problem on my hands. I should have stopped it right then. That first morning when I woke up and found her curled against me, I should have sat her down and said this wasn't going to work. But I didn't. I told myself she was asleep, that she didn't mean to get that close, that unconscious movement didn't count as crossing boundaries. The truth is, I was afraid of hurting her feelings. She was already so broken, so fragile. How could I reject her when all she needed was comfort? That's what I kept telling myself anyway. The pattern continued. Every night she'd climb into bed, promise to stay on her side, and then by morning, I'd wake up with her pressed against me. Sometimes her head would be on my shoulder. Sometimes her leg would be thrown over mine, and every time I'd carefully extract myself without waking her, get ready for work, and leave before we had to talk about it. During the day, she acted like everything was normal. We'd eat breakfast together, talk about random things, and she'd spend her afternoons supposedly looking for jobs online. But I noticed she wasn't actually applying anywhere. She was just browsing, scrolling, passing time until night came and she could slip back into my room. "How's the job search going?" I asked one evening while we ate dinner. "It's tough out there," she said, not meeting my eyes. "I've sent out a few applications, but nothing yet." I wanted to push harder, to ask which companies she'd applied to see proof that she was actually trying. But I didn't. I was avoiding confrontation, letting things slide because dealing with reality felt too hard. My girlfriend, Jessica, was starting to notice something was off. "You seem distracted lately," she said when we met for coffee one Saturday afternoon. "Is everything okay with your sister staying there?" "Yeah, it's fine," I lied. "She's going through a rough time, but she's handling it." Jessica studied my face like she was trying to read between the lines. "How long is she planning to stay?" "Not sure yet. Until she gets back on her feet." "That's really nice of you," Jessica said, but there was something in her tone that suggested she wanted to say more. Instead, she changed the subject, and I was grateful not to dig deeper into territory I wasn't ready to explore. At work, people were noticing too. I was exhausted all the time, barely sleeping because I was so tense every night, so aware of my sister's presence beside me. My boss pulled me aside one afternoon and asked if I was feeling all right. "Just some family stuff," I told him. Nothing serious, but it was becoming serious. The weird thing was, my sister seemed to be getting more dependent, not less. She'd started making comments when Jessica called me, little remarks that felt off. "Your girlfriend again?" she'd say with this edge in her voice. "She calls a lot." "We're dating," I'd respond. "That's kind of normal, I guess. I just think it's nice that you're here in the evenings." Not always running off, it was subtle, but it was there. This possessive undertone that made my skin crawl. I started wondering if her neediness was really about the breakup, or if something else was going on. Was she manipulating me? Was I being unfair for even thinking that? One night, about 3 weeks into this arrangement, everything came to a head. Jessica had texted saying she wanted to stop by and drop off some food she'd made. I'd told her the spare key was under the mat, and she should just let herself in since I might be in the shower. It seemed harmless enough. I was actually at my computer, headphones on, working on a project when Jessica walked into my apartment. I didn't hear her come in. What I didn't know was that my sister was in my bedroom, and she'd fallen asleep in my bed in the middle of the day. She'd been tired, she'd say later, and my room was just more comfortable than hers. When Jessica walked into the bedroom looking for me, she found my sister curled up in my bed wearing one of my hoodies. I heard the commotion from the living room, raised voices. My heart dropped into my stomach as I ripped off my headphones and ran toward my bedroom. What is going on here? Jessica was standing in the doorway, her face red with anger and confusion. My sister was sitting up in bed looking startled and guilty. "It's not what it looks like," I said immediately, which is the worst possible thing to say in any situation because it always sounds like a lie. "Really? Because it looks like your sister is sleeping in your bed in your clothes." "She was just taking a nap," my sister said defensively. "The guest room bed isn't comfortable." "Then sleep on the couch," Jessica shot back. "This is inappropriate." "It's really not a big deal," my sister said, and I could hear the tears starting in her voice. "I'm going through something really hard right now, and my brother is just being supportive." "Supportive is fine. This is something else." I stood between them, feeling like I was being torn in half. "Jessica, can we talk about this in the other room?" "No, I think I've seen enough." She turned to me, and the hurt in her eyes cut deep. "I've been patient about this whole situation because I know you're trying to help family. But this, sleeping in the same bed? Her wearing your clothes? Where's the line?" "We're not doing anything wrong," I said, but even as the words left my mouth, I knew how weak they sounded. "Maybe not technically," Jessica said. "But this whole setup is unhealthy. For both of you. She needs to deal with her problems, and you're letting her hide from them by playing house with you." "That's not fair," my sister said, tears now streaming down her face. "You don't understand what I've been through." "I don't need to understand," Jessica said, her voice cold. "What I understand is that this isn't normal, and your brother is too nice to tell you that." Jessica looked at me one more time. "Call me when you figure out what you actually want." Then she walked out, leaving the apartment silent except for my sister's quiet crying. I stood there, frozen, knowing that something fundamental had just broken. My sister looked up at me with those sad, desperate eyes. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I didn't mean to cause problems with your girlfriend." But even as she said it, I wondered if part of her had wanted exactly this. If she'd been slowly pushing Jessica out of the picture without me even realizing it. The thought made me feel sick. That night, for the first time in weeks, I told my sister she needed to sleep in the guest room. She argued at first, said she couldn't handle being alone, but I stood firm. After she left, closing the door behind her with more force than necessary, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling. I'd made a mess of everything. I'd let things go too far, blurred too many lines, and now I didn't know how to fix any of it. Through the wall, I could hear my sister crying. Part of me wanted to go comfort her, but the bigger part of me knew that's exactly what had gotten us into this situation in the first place. The next morning felt like walking through a minefield. My sister didn't come out of her room. I made breakfast, knocked on her door to tell her food was ready, and got silence in return. Fine. Maybe space was what we both needed. I called Jessica 3 times. Each call went straight to voicemail. I texted her an apology, tried to explain, but my words felt hollow even as I typed them. How do you explain something you don't fully understand yourself? At work, I couldn't focus. My mind kept replaying the scene from the night before. Jessica's hurt expression. My sister's tears. The way I'd frozen like a coward instead of taking control of the situation weeks ago when I should have. My coworker Dave noticed me staring at my computer screen without actually doing anything. "You look like you got hit by a truck," he said, rolling his chair over to my desk. "Family drama," I muttered. "The sister situation?" I'd mentioned she was staying with me, but I'd kept the details vague. Now, sitting there exhausted and confused, I found myself telling Dave the whole story. About the sleeping arrangements, about how uncomfortable it had become, about Jessica finding my sister in my bed. Dave whistled low. "Man, that's complicated. Tell me about it." "But here's the thing," Dave said, leaning back in his chair. "You know it's not normal, right? Like, you've got to know that what's happening isn't healthy." "She's just struggling," I said defensively. "I get that. Breakups are rough. But you're not her therapist. You're not even supposed to be her emotional support animal. You're her brother, and brothers set boundaries." The words hit harder than they should have, maybe because I knew he was right. I'd been so focused on not hurting my sister's feelings that I'd let the whole situation become toxic. When I got home that evening, my sister was sitting on the couch. She'd showered and changed clothes, which was an improvement from the past few weeks, but her eyes were red and puffy. "We need to talk," I said, sitting down across from her. "I know." She pulled her knees up to her chest. "I'm sorry about yesterday." "About Jessica? I didn't mean for things to get so weird." "It's not just yesterday," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "This whole situation has gotten out of hand. The sleeping arrangements, the dependency, all of it. It's not healthy." "I know it looks bad," she said quickly, "but you don't understand. When I'm alone, the thoughts get so dark. I start thinking about all the time I wasted, about how worthless I must be for him to throw me away like that. And then I start thinking maybe everyone would be better off if I wasn't around." My blood went cold. "Are you saying you're thinking about hurting yourself?" "No, I mean, not really. I have scary thoughts sometimes. And when I'm near you, when I can hear you breathing or feel another person close by, the thoughts go away." I rubbed my face with my hands. This was bigger than I'd thought. "Are you seeing anyone? Like a therapist?" "I went twice," she admitted. "Right after I moved in. And I stopped going because I felt better. Because being here with you made me feel safe." "That's the problem," I said, and watched her face fall. "I'm not making you feel better. I'm just giving you a way to avoid dealing with what you're actually feeling. You need professional help, not me letting you sleep in my bed." "You think I'm crazy," she said, her voice small. "I think you're hurting, and I think you need more help than I can give you." I leaned forward. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to find a therapist and actually stick with it. You're going to sleep in your own room, and you're going to start seriously looking for a job because you can't live here forever." "Or what?" There was a flash of anger in her eyes. "You'll kick me out?" "I don't want it to come to that. But yes, if you're not willing to help yourself, then you'll need to find somewhere else to stay." We sat in heavy silence. Finally, she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "He used to tell me I was worthless, that I was lucky he put up with me because no one else would want me." My hands clenched into fists. He was wrong. Was he, though? Look at me. I'm 28 years old, sleeping in my brother's bed because I can't handle being alone. That's pretty pathetic. What's pathetic is letting him control your life even after he's gone, I said. Every day you spend hiding here instead of moving forward, he wins. Is that what you want? She started crying then, really crying, her whole body shaking with sobs. Part of me wanted to go comfort her like I'd been doing for weeks. But the bigger part of me knew that's exactly what Dave had been talking about. Comfort wasn't always helpful. Sometimes people needed to sit with their pain instead of running from it. "I'm scared," she said through her tears. "I'm so scared of being alone." "I know. But you have to face it anyway." The next few days were rough. My sister stayed in her room most of the time, and when she did come out, she barely spoke to me. I felt guilty, like I'd abandoned her or betrayed her somehow. But I also felt relieved. The apartment felt less suffocating without her constant presence in my space. I called our mom to update her on what was happening. That was a mistake. "You're being too hard on her," Mom said immediately. "She's going through a difficult time. I know that. But enabling her isn't helping." "Enabling? You're her brother. You're supposed to support her." "I am supporting her, just not in the way she wants." Mom sighed dramatically. "You always were the cold one. Even as a kid, you never liked giving hugs or being affectionate. This isn't about affection. This is about boundaries. Well, I think you're making a mistake. That girl needs family right now, not tough love." After I hung up, I felt even worse. Was I being too harsh? Was Mom right that I was just being cold and unfeeling? I called Jessica again. This time she answered. "Hey," I said, relief flooding through me. "I'm so glad you picked up." "I almost didn't," she admitted. "But I figured we should talk." I told her everything. About the conversation with my sister, about setting boundaries, about feeling torn between helping and enabling. Jessica listened quietly. "I'm sorry for how I reacted," she said when I finished. "I was hurt and angry. But I get it. She's family. You want to help. But I was helping wrong," I said. "Yeah, you were. But you're trying to fix it now. That counts for something. Does it count enough for you to give me another chance?" There was a pause. I need to think about it. This whole thing really shook me. "I need to know you can maintain boundaries, not just with your sister, but in general." "I understand. Give me a few days," she said. "And good luck with your sister. I hope she gets the help she needs." After we hung up, I sat in the silence of my apartment. Through the wall, I could hear my sister moving around in her room. For the first time in weeks, she wasn't in my space, in my bed, wrapped around me. It felt strange, but it also felt right. Now I just had to hope she'd actually take the help I was trying to give her instead of pushing her away for good. 3 days after our confrontation, my sister emerged from her room with something I hadn't seen in weeks. Determination. She'd made an appointment with a therapist for the following Monday. She'd also started looking at job postings, actually writing down companies and positions instead of just scrolling mindlessly. "I'm trying," she said simply when I asked about it. "I don't know if I can do this, but I'm trying." "That's all I'm asking," I told her. "But trying doesn't mean succeeding right away." The first therapy session left her exhausted and emotional. She came home and went straight to her room. Around midnight, I woke up to a soft knock on my door. "I can't sleep," she said through the door. "Can I just sit in there?" "I won't bother you. I just need to be near someone." Every instinct told me to say yes, to let her in, to comfort her, to make the pain go away. But I thought about what Dave had said, about Jessica's hurt face, about how I'd been helping her hide instead of heal. "No," I said, my voice gentle but firm. "You need to learn to sit with the discomfort." "Please," she begged, and I could hear tears in her voice. "Just tonight. If I say yes tonight, you'll ask again tomorrow. And the next night. We've been down this road." I heard her slide down to sit against the door. "I hate this. I hate feeling this way. I know. But it gets better. You just have to push through it." She sat there for a while. I could hear her breathing on the other side of the door. Eventually, she got up and went back to her room. I didn't sleep much that night, wondering if I'd made the right call or if I was being cruel. The pattern repeated itself several more times over the next 2 weeks. She'd have a hard day and she'd show up at my door asking to sleep in my room. Each time I said no. Each time it got a little easier for both of us. Her therapist suggested she try some coping mechanisms. She got a weighted blanket for her bed, started listening to meditation apps at night, and began keeping a journal of her thoughts instead of letting them spiral in her head. "It's helping," she admitted one evening while we ate dinner together. "I still hate being alone, but it's not quite as terrifying as it was." "That's progress," I said. "The therapist says I have codependency issues. Apparently, I've been using relationships to define my self-worth for years. It didn't start with my ex. It's been a pattern since I was a teenager." "That makes sense," I said carefully. "She also said I was doing the same thing with you, using you as a replacement for the relationship I lost. That's pretty messed up, isn't it?" "It's human," I said. "People look for comfort where they can find it. The important thing is recognizing it and working to change it." She nodded slowly. "I'm sorry for putting you in that position, for making things weird, for messing things up with Jessica." "We're going to be okay," I said, hoping it was true. Jessica and I had been talking more, but we hadn't seen each other in person. She was still processing everything, still deciding if she could trust me to maintain boundaries. I couldn't blame her. I was still learning how to do it myself. My sister started applying for jobs seriously. She had 2 interviews in 1 week, which felt like a huge step forward. She didn't get either position, but the practice of interviewing, of putting herself out there, seemed to boost her confidence. Then her ex-boyfriend texted her. She showed me the message with shaking hands. "I miss you. Can we talk?" "What are you going to do?" I asked. "I don't know." Part of me wants to respond. Part of me wants to block his number and never think about him again. What does your therapist say? That I should sit with the feeling instead of reacting immediately. That I should ask myself what I really want, not what feels comfortable in the moment. That sounds like good advice. She stared at the message for a long time. Then she turned off her phone and set it down. I'm not ready to decide, so I'm just not going to decide tonight. That night was hard for her. I could hear her pacing in her room, could feel the tension radiating through the walls. Around 2 a.m, I heard her door open. My body tensed, waiting for the knock on my door, but it didn't come. Instead, I heard her go to the kitchen, heard the kettle start heating water. She made tea and went back to her room. She'd caught herself. She'd wanted the comfort, but had found another way to cope. In the morning, I told her I was proud of her. It was just tea, she said, but she smiled a little. It was more than tea. It was you taking care of yourself instead of depending on me. Over the next few weeks, the improvements became more obvious. She got a part-time job at a bookstore. It wasn't her dream career, but it was something. She started contributing money for groceries and utilities, which made her feel less like a burden and more like a temporary roommate. She stopped asking to sleep in my room entirely. In fact, there were nights when I'd hear her laughing on the phone with a friend or humming while she cooked dinner. The heavy sadness that had defined her when she first moved in was lifting, replaced by something that looked like hope. I signed a lease today, she said one evening, her voice nervous but excited. Really? Where? A studio apartment about 15 minutes from here. It's small and the kitchen is basically non-existent, but it's mine. I can move in at the end of the month. I felt a weird mix of emotions, relief that she was ready to move forward, sadness that she'd be leaving, pride in how far she'd come. That's amazing, I said. I'm really proud of you. I couldn't have done it without you, she said. And I don't just mean letting me stay here. I mean, you loved me enough to not let me hide forever. That took guts, especially when I was making it so hard. You weren't making it easy, I admitted with a small laugh. I know, and I'm sorry for that. I'm sorry for a lot of things. We don't need to keep apologizing, I said. We just need to move forward. Jessica agreed to meet me for dinner that weekend. It was the first time we'd seen each other in person since that awful day she'd found my sister in my bed. We sat across from each other at a small restaurant, both nervous. Your sister's moving out? Jessica asked, end of the month. How do you feel about that? Honestly, relieved. Is that terrible? Jessica shook her head. It's human. You've been carrying a lot of weight. It makes sense that you'd want your life back. I want you back, I said quietly. If you'll give me another chance. She considered this for a long moment. I think we need to take things slow. I need to trust that you'll maintain boundaries, that you won't let yourself get sucked into situations like that again. I can do that, I said. I'm learning. I promise. She reached across the table and took my hand. Then let's try again, slowly. It wasn't a perfect resolution, but it was a start. And sometimes that's all you can ask for. The last month before my sister moved out felt different than the previous 3. There was a lightness in the apartment that hadn't been there before. She'd wake up early, make herself breakfast, and head to work at the bookstore. She'd come home tired but satisfied, talking about customers she'd helped or books she'd recommended. We fell into a rhythm that felt more like roommates than like a caretaker and someone who needed constant support. We'd take turns cooking dinner, watch movies together on weekends, and have actual conversations instead of me just trying to keep her afloat emotionally. I think I'm starting to like myself again, she said one night while we were cleaning up after dinner. Is that weird to say? Not at all. I think that's the whole point. My therapist says I'm making really good progress. She thinks I've been dealing with codependency and anxiety for years, and my ex just made it worse. But the patterns were already there. Are you still thinking about his text? I asked. He'd messaged her 2 more times since that first one, each message more desperate than the last. Not really, she said. I blocked him last week. Felt good to just close that door completely. Good for you. The thing is, I realized I don't miss him. I miss the idea of not being alone, but that's not a good reason to go back to someone who made me feel worthless. She dried the last dish and put it away. I'd rather be alone and working on myself than be with someone who tears me down. The growth in her was obvious. The girl who'd shown up at my door 3 months ago with 2 suitcases and tears in her eyes was gone. replaced by someone who was figuring out how to stand on her own feet. Jessica and I were rebuilding too, slowly like she'd asked. We'd go on dates, nothing too serious, just coffee or walks in the park. We'd text throughout the day. She'd come over to the apartment occasionally, and things were no longer awkward. My sister would chat with her normally. No more possessive comments or weird tension. "I like seeing you happy," Jessica said one afternoon while we sat on a bench watching people jog by. "You seem lighter." "I feel lighter," I admitted. "Like I can breathe again. I'm sorry I gave you such a hard time about helping your sister. I understand now that you were trying to do the right thing. You were right to call me out," I said. "I needed someone to tell me I was enabling her instead of helping her. I was too close to see it clearly." "We both learned something," she said, leaning her head on my shoulder. "I learned patience, you learned boundaries. Maybe it was all meant to happen this way." Moving day came faster than I expected. My sister had been slowly taking things to her new apartment over the past week, so by the time the official moving day arrived, there wasn't much left. Just her bed, a few boxes, and some furniture I'd helped her buy from a thrift store. Dave from work came over to help us load everything into a borrowed truck. My sister had made sandwiches for everyone, and we worked through the afternoon moving everything into her new place. The studio apartment was small but bright, with big windows that let in plenty of sunlight. "It's perfect," she said, standing in the middle of her new space and turning in a slow circle. "It's really, really perfect." "You did good," I told her. After Dave left and we'd finished unpacking the essentials, my sister and I sat on her new couch, which was really just a love seat from IKEA, and ate pizza from the place down the street. "Thank you," she said suddenly, "for everything, for letting me stay, for putting up with my mess, for being tough on me when I needed it. That's what family does." "Not all family," she said quietly. "Mom still thinks you were too hard on me. She told me I should have stayed with you longer, that you kicked me out too soon." "Do you think that?" She shook her head. "No, I think you saved me from myself. If you'd let me keep hiding, I'd still be sleeping in your bed, avoiding life and falling apart inside. Instead, I'm here in my own place with a job and a therapist and an actual plan for my future." "I'm proud of you," I said, and meant it. "I'm proud of me too," she said with a small smile. "That's new." I left her apartment as the sun